Remember the 11th of September. The lies, treasonous plot, propaganda spread, and pain we've felt for the last dozen years for naught. So remember the 11th of September. The nefarious lies they wrought. For on the 11th of September, we lost our liberties, and death rode aloft. Hello, everybody, from the stronghold, as it were. Lots of shit happening lately, and a whole lot of nothing happening lately. Woke up this fine September 11th morning, 2019. Had a long ass morning, long ass night. Still, just another day. You know, same old shit, just doing it all over again. This morning, though, I woke up, it was a little different. I haven't felt like this since 2001. Woke up in this kind of same, kind of walking through a groggy fog. Yeah. Something ain't right about this year. It's kind of like kind of hail back kind of feeling, you feel something that came about. You feel something that just showed up out of the blue. Something you weren't expecting has happened. Somewhere. Obviously, you got no control over it, and most people would reason, well, if you got no control over it, why get butthurt? Why worry? I could see that idea and that manner of thinking. But, that's how the rumors flew about September 11th. So, I'm here to dispel some theories right quick with what little knowledge I do have. And trust me, it is not little. There's a lot there. It's just I don't always use it. So, without further ado, September 11th, the mysteries and conspiracy theories and all that shit. We're gonna say, well, let's just go with the opening stupidities. The original footage of the September 11th attacks, I don't have that on file, but I do have access to it. Y'all have access to it. I mean, y'all have had access to it for the past 10 years. It's right here on YouTube. It's all over the freaking place. It's anywhere where you can download this sort of stuff. BitChute, Patreon, all other platforms, social platforms. I'm sure Facebook is just a writhe this morning with folks talking a whole lot of hoo-ha and not knowing a whole lot of facts. So we're going to go over it. The gentlemen who carried out the attacks were, in fact, Saudi nationals um, and were at the time on work visa, and one was actually living here, uh, citizen, uh, naturalized citizen, who had moved here to the United States after the Afghan Wars. The first of the Afghan Wars, but having to do with Sheikh bin Riyal and the like. Anyways, this was back during the Reagan years. They moved here to the United States. One of them stayed here as a citizen. Um, at least one of them. I think there was a few of them that might have been citizens, but the others were here on work visas, and they were learning how to fly large aircraft. Now, of course, this isn't going to throw up any red flags. You have to think about it. If somebody's here on a work visa, of course, nobody's going to look at that like, oh, wait, this person is a foreign national and they're here on American soil and they're here illegally. So, since they're not here illegally, the first thing that people are going to be doing is they're going to be looking into things like what are they doing here? What does their work visa entail? And their work visas basically entailed pilot training and learning how to be a pilot. So the time that they were here, of course, red flags didn't really show up. They were, I don't want to say, um, like we would ever know that it was going to happen. We had no idea as Americans. We were living in our blissful unawareness, thinking, okay, well, the wars have been fought. There's nothing more to have to worry about. Nobody's out there trying to go and attack America because they're like, well, dude, it's the fucking stupidest thing you could do. I mean, there are people that they actually train for that shit specifically in America for that purpose. I mean, why the fuck should we try? There's no reason for it. Of course, you can only be an American citizen and have to be a natural born American citizen to be a Minuteman. It's one of the downsides, I'd say, because there's a lot of immigrants that are here now that would probably be U.S. Minutemen very happily, very readily be U.S. Minutemen without even a thought. But here's the thing: in order to avoid the want to say the intelligence nightmare that the U.S. military has to deal with, in that they take immigrants happily. Anybody who is not naturally born in the United States, they take them happily. Um, because they don't care who's in the army. They don't care who's in the Marines or who's in the Navy. They don't. The military is very clear that they don't care who is going over there. They care that you are adequately trained, and they care that you keep your mouth shut and you get your shit done. So, that being said, um, nobody could have really thought, should we look into maybe these gentlemen who are pilots or are training to be pilots have military backgrounds or have religious extremist backgrounds or anything like that. We had no thought of this. It's just a simple situation. The standard of intelligence is that an intelligent person is not, even no matter their religion, they're not going to carry out some fucking heinous act where they go to another country and blow themselves up and kill themselves over some crazy ass thought that some gray haired fucking loony had. So, we're not going to look for those things. Of course we're not going to look for those things. It's important to kind of, go say, well, religious extremism has its places and it has its uses, but it's just not while flying a plane. We didn't think about that because you're allowed to practice your religion here, regardless of your religion. And your religion is not your political ideals, which is what we didn't understand at the time about Islam. Most Americans would agree with me in this, that they would believe that Islam is a religion of peace, of prosperity, of happiness, of altruism, and of the explicit interest of serving one God, the explicit interest of treating others as you would wish to be treated, and the confidence booster that your God supposedly wants you to be a confident person. So it's a good thing, supposedly. In most cases, yes, Islam is a good thing. However, it is also a political ideal. And this is where the difficulty comes in about treating it as a religion in America. The Constitution clearly states that no political ideal nor political pastime may have a counterintuitivity to the Constitution of the United States, meaning that you cannot bring about monarchy, you cannot bring about communism or any kind of aristocratical government. Okay, no government may have the abilities or the lifestyles of an aristocrat in order to keep the American public free. This is where we work as, the liberty qualities. If you don't work on trying to keep your public free, then your public's not going to be very happy with you and they're going to revolt. So, there you go. That was the original ideals of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. Now, everybody wants to make money. That's an obvious factor. Everybody wants money. Okay? Problem comes when you shyster others to try and get that money. Pardon me. When you shyster others to get that money, you're no longer a worker, you're no longer a laborer, you're no longer a contributing member of society, you're a salesman. Now, my dad was a salesman. He fucking hated his life. He hated the fact that every day in order to make the money necessary to go and, pay for child support and pay for his own kids and pay for other kids and then pay for his wife and pay for his stepchildren and pay for his dogs and pay for his cars and pay for You see where I'm getting at? He had to pay a lot of money. He was a hard worker, but here's the problem. He couldn't make money as a laborer. He couldn't make money doing what he did best, which was he was a master machinist. Probably one of the best in his field. I doubt that there were many who were better, considering that, you say, okay, well, CNC programming and, all this. He knew CNC lathes like the back of his hand. He could run an RD20. He could run what was it? The TD28. He could run them all. Me personally, I could do the hand machining, but I couldn't do CNCs. I just never been really great with computers. It's just a reality. I don't like computers. I freaking hate computers. They're a fallible instrument which is constantly failing. So, yes, I don't like computers. At the same time, if you're going to put that amount of fallacy into something like artificial intelligence, you really think that artificial intelligence is going to be a strong suit for putting your faith in? You're an idiot. But back onto what I was saying before about September 11th and all this. The men who were going to do this terrorist act and pilot the planes, we had no idea they were going to do this because they kept their true intention secret. And it was a method of utilizing operational intelligence. Basically, you knew what the other guy was thinking, so you did everything in your power to make them not think it. That's how they got around us. They were really good at what they did. And when people say, "Oh, well, they didn't crash planes into the towers," were you in New York? I wasn't in New York. I had family members who were in New York. They said they heard the crashes, but they weren't close enough to actually have to see the planes or anything like that. I do know that regardless of a plane going into a building, or plane crashes in residential areas, plane crashes in warehouse districts, plane crashes in banking districts and downtown districts of places, we've got a lot of data on it. Actual plane crashes, we could verify they were plane crashes because when the plane went down, they still had contact with the flight tower and flight control. So anyways, we could verify these other ones were plane crashes. These 3-4 planes that were hijacked. Oh, sorry. Hold on, folks. As you could tell, I'm kind of having to do this on the fly. Once again, just because this is how this is the only time I get to myself to be able to do things like this. So, when I'm running and gunning, I don't have time to sit down and bring things to y'all. So, anyways, right. So they said they didn't hear the towers fall, or didn't see the planes hit the towers. They heard the towers fall. But in my experience, through all plane crashes and all the different amounts of demolitions and whatnot, buildings, especially skyscrapers, they don't fall. At least they don't when a plane crashes into them. And a lot of folks are going to say, "Well, you don't know what you're talking about. It was burning diesel fuel at 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit." No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I don't care how fast you get the air blowing across diesel fuel, the hottest it can get is 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the hottest it can get. This is coming from a man who runs a forge. All right? Literally. I work day in, day out, just remedial tasks, but I have a forge. All right? That thing hits about 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not hot enough to melt steel. They're selling you a pack of lies. In order to melt steel, you need induction, because you can't get steel to heat up fast enough for the oxides to not form, creating a brittle rock shield around the outside of the steel mass. Now, you say, "Oh, well, they hit them at in the towers just at a specific point so far down that the brittle mass would have caused a collapse." No, it wouldn't have. Not without multiple planes hitting at an exacting time. Now, this is where it comes in, all right? I'm going to try and use my hands to explain again. Say these are your towers here, okay? And the plane comes flying in. Now, you've got so much area above towards the top of the tower, over the top where the plane flew and hit. Now, first plane impacts. Blows flames everywhere, jet fuel's burning, hot flames over 1,000 degrees. Okay, great. It's not melting the steel. It's getting hot. The steel might buckle and bend a little bit, but as it flexes back and forth, it's going to settle down into itself, maybe collapse one floor and hit and just stop. Now, and this is in a steel building, and these particular buildings were steel built. Now, it's going to just kind of collapse and stop. All right. When it stops, it's going to be structurally unsound, but it's not going to fall on itself. Now, if you took one plane and it hit, and you've got all those flames going, okay? Right then, you take another plane and you hit the top, and it causes a collapse of that top section, not of the whole building. See, the thing is that these buildings are built so that the levels will actually peel themselves off if necessary. So looking into this and looking further, because we recognize, hey, these things are way up there in the air, there's a possibility a plane could go off and accidentally hit such a thing. So, in that same respect and regard, we have to look at the thought of, well, if we thought about this as engineers and whatnot, you know, before my day, of course, but I'm just saying, if we Americans thought about these things, we're going to engineer it into the build. It's who we are. That's how we engineer things. We engineer brilliance into our builds. So, if this thing wouldn't fall on its own, and we knew someday we'd have to actually take this building down, it'd have to come down. And it was so close to other buildings and other metropolitan center that when it came down, it would have to be demolished in such a way that it came straight down. And it had to come down perfectly. Nothing could ever make it so that it could not come down perfectly. We'd engineer that into the build. Well, folks said that they saw liquid steel, not just liquid metal, all right? Liquid copper is about 1600 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's a lot of copper in buildings, but this was not copper. They're saying, okay, no, this was coming down the steel girders, and you don't put copper piping on steel girders unless you want to shock the shit out of whoever's standing up there at the top of the roof or in the top levels of the building. So you don't put copper next to steel girders. So that's not going to be your metal source. If it's not your metal source, but it's coming down the steel girders and it looks like it's dripping molten lava, it's probably steel. And if the steel melted, there's only one thing that Americans know of that will do that, being started by jet fuel. That is magnesium-based nanothermite. There's aluminum in it, there's copper, there's iron, there's nickel, but it's all engineered into packets that they would put up the girders all the way up so that when when they ignited, these would all collapse it down like an accordion and it just fall into a mass, a pile at the bottom. Think about that for a second. The towers would fall into a mass at the bottom, the way that they were engineered to be, if the thermite ever ignited. The building was engineered to come down at some point in time because it had to be engineered to come down at some point in time. Because buildings don't stay up forever. It's a simple fact of being on Earth. So, if these two buildings were engineered to come down, pancake style, demolitions, well, then we would have to look at the thought and the process of it wouldn't take that much to bring them down. And because the stacking charges, the thermite packets or whatever, were mostly placed about midsection level, about where the runway going across was, going up to the top of the towers, the only way to ignite those is to get into the inside with some form of magnesium ribbon, or have a source of aluminum, a source of magnesium, and a source of fire. Enter the airplane. So yes, the buildings were engineered to come down, but they weren't demolished on purpose. They were terrorist attacks. There were people here who actually flew planes into the towers. People really died. People really flew that plane into the Pennsylvania ground trying to save lives rather than lose more. Now, what footage we do have of the Pentagon, it's not a plane. And those particular frames were cut out of publicly released footage. It's not a plane. That was a missile. It was not a small one, so it had to be carried by some form of aircraft. Yeah, it was not a missile. I mean, not a plane. The little bits and fragments of stuff, that was, took about an hour and a half to put that shit out there and about 4 hours to pick it all up. It wasn't a plane. What was the third one? Oh no, the third one was in the towers as well. Fourth one hit Pennsylvania, was supposed to actually hit the White House. So about the time that we realized we were getting attacked, we realized it was an attack and not just some weebo fucking running around in his his Cessna goofing off out there. It was an actual 747 Heavy International that was headed direct to impact, and they dispatched a fighter plane out there. About the time they dispatched the fighter plane, I don't know if it was actual seeing the fighter plane that caused the passengers to speak up and say, hey, something's not right, and then to ultimately revolt and then commandeer the aircraft and save thousands of lives in that particular instance. Whatever the case may be, those brave men and women of Flight 93 took action in the darkest hour. They fought back, and it's taken a good 20 years for our country to grow a set of balls. And that's just in the least. I mean, to actually have the kind of American pride these men and women had. Y'all are pitiful. Anyways, sorry, I had to. It bothers me. So the planes, the attacks on September 11th, there was a whole lot of footage and whatnot of the towers falling, and then building number 7 up at the World Trade Center. Building number 7 was actually never hit by anything, even falling debris. I like how they say, "Oh well, building 7 is going to be demolished because of falling debris." It wasn't. It was not structurally unstable. Building 7 could have continued. It could have been continuously used as the Grand Lobby and used as a construction site platform. It had the structural rigidity. When they demolished it, a lot of folks said, "Oh well, here's this footage of this lady saying, on the channel 7 or whatever, channel 11 or 13 or whatever." I don't know. I don't care. All right. Whatever it was, she was standing there in front of a picture of Building 7 before it was demolished. About, I think it was like 4.5 hours before it was demolished. So this lady sat there and said, "Yes, as you can see behind me, the building number 7 has now fallen. Both towers have fallen." There was one tower standing. And we're trying to get more information right now. The whole thing, about how newscasters try to spin a story. The reality is that they were going to take down Building 7 anyways. They realized, hey, you know what? Fuck it. Let's drop it. I mean, everything else is gone. And this is where the desperation of that hour set in. Everybody was just so beat down, tired, and in despair that they decided, fuck it, drop it. And the media, instead of taking the facts and putting them out there, they decided to spin it so that they could get a reaction, as they've done since the Nixon administration, which, so, Americans have been on it since the Reagan administration. Anyways, media lost their asses that day because they decided to spin a real tragedy Hold on a second. Y'all tried to fucking spin a real tragedy. And you expect us Americans to not be like, yeah, fuck you. I ain't buying it. I mean, come on. Of course we're not going to believe that horseshit. But when you do the actual in-depth research and you spend years, not months, not weeks, on trying to get the little tidbits and the little tiny stuff in there, you realize, whoa, dude, these fuckers knew about that particular failure, that particular foresight and that building construction. They knew that if you could get the top layers to burn, the bottom layers would collapse as well. Because the thermite would melt the beams to the point where it would actually start to pancake, and because of the weight, it would continue to come down right into its own footprint. They knew it. I want to know how they knew it. I want to know how they got access to that particular intelligence, because that was privileged information. That was information that only the owner, a couple of contractors, and the United States government had access to. So saying, well, because the government had access to it, we were supposed to be safe, is bullshit. The government gave them that information as a sign of a peace treaty during the Afghan wars. They've had that information since the very beginning. The 2 terrorist attacks that were the bombings down in the basement and the sublevels of the Twin Towers. Excuse me for a second, but let me point something else out to you. That was distraction. Bullshit. Absolute bullshit. It was one guy with a freaking concussion grenade letting it off in the basement. When that energy reverberates up the steel beams and back down the steel beams, it causes the whole damn thing to shake and shimmy. And you couldn't use more than a concussion grenade or it would have messed with the foundations, caused cracking in the foundations. You'd only know that if you knew things about harmonics, like, you ever pick a guitar? There's a thought for you. You have to know harmonics and how harmonics behave in steel. When you hit a piece of steel, it reverberates all the way up and down it. And it goes back and forth as that wave travels back and forth as it dissipates across the atomic structure of the steel. If there's too much energy, then the steel can't handle it, and it breaks down concrete. This was technical experience that people had understood for a long time. All it was that was in the basements was a couple of concussion grenades. They didn't even have a truck. They pulled the truck in afterwards and shredded it. Because back in the day, propaganda was easy to spread. Because people didn't have access to information like we do now. When it's either you've got access to no information and then you're safe because nobody has the information, or you have access to all the information and you're safe because you make the decisions. That is being armed. Okay? Access to information. Because these gentlemen were armed. They had information at their disposal and they were able to utilize it to great effect. So saying that, oh, well, it was an inside job. Fuck yes, it was. So what? Doesn't mean that it was Americans that carried the shit out. It just means that it was Americans who made a couple of fuck ups and then went, oh shit, I shit in a turd bowl. I put a turd in a punch bowl. Now nobody's going to want to drink that Kool-Aid. I mean, if they would have released the information prior, said, hey, wait a minute, the Saudis have the information of how this building can come down. It's no longer a safe building. The American public would have acted accordingly. We would have known what to do and we would have taken care of the situation. Instead, somebody lost their ass and 3,000 people lost their lives. So, in retrospect, yes, it was an inside job because one man made a fuck up. Or rather, a group of men made a fuck up, trying to get another group of men to fight alongside us. And the biggest fuck up was that we did not do what we said we would do as Americans. We said we'd help them instill a new government, which was acquiescible to the government or to the law and rule which bin Laden was requesting and his constituency was requesting. Now, that being said, that government led to the kind of shitstorm we've got now in the Middle East, which we're just kind of paw slogging through the ends of it, you know. We're trying to help these people get back on their feet, but back on your feet and standing tall are two different fucking things. I mean, we Americans, we're not standing tall anymore. We are barely on our feet. I would say we're on our knees right now, taking care of the world's problems. I don't think it's righteous. I don't think it's all right. But you know what? We're the big dog on the block. Not happy about it. I'd say this. I'd rather our boys came home. Helped us to repel domestic terrorists and domestic forces, which are at this moment, at this very moment, causing American citizens harm, destroying the Constitution of the United States, taking that which you swore your oath to and burning it. And y'all say that you're all right with it. That's what you're saying. Generals, commanders, majors, colonels, y'all high ranking top brass. You know what I'm saying. First lieutenants, lieutenant commanders, within the militia, they know what's going on. They see it every day. They watch it happen in their reports, their scales, their video logs. I mean, everything. It's there for them to see. So what if, like, my area out here is kind of passive and peaceful and whatnot because of the fact that it's mostly American patriots out here who really don't fucking want to have to deal with your shit and will stomp you into the ground if you fucking try and make it that way. But, you know, I don't know how to say it other than to say this is who Americans really are. Here in Blythe, you'll see a little piece of that. That, come on in, sit on down. Let's get you a meal. You know, tell me about yourself. I want to know. Later on, we'll go out in the back 40, go shoot some guns. You know, that's what Americans are about. It's home life. And then to say, well, you know, all of this is coming from something that we had no control over, and now we're just buying it hook, line, and sinker. I mean, you look at most Americans, they are buying this horse shit brand. They are fucking being fed hook, line, and sinker. And I tell you what, that sinker's like a damn cannonball. It's holding us at the bottom. We're drowning in it. So remember, the 11th of September. The nefarious lies and treason. For on that day, the 11th of September, Americans lost for no reason. Commodore Price out.